If you were given everything you prayed for at the exact moment you desired it, would you be able to carry it with peace, or would you crumble under its weight? Pause here. This is not a rhetorical question. It's a mirror. You see, life doesn't delay you to punish you. Life, God, the universe, the Tao, delays you to protect you, not from success, but from yourself when you're not yet ready. In a world that rewards fast results, immediate responses, and urgent gratification, we must remember some things are only beautiful because they arrive slowly, like sunrise, like wisdom, like trust. When we rush, we often force connections, misread people, or jump into commitments we're not prepared for, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. These rushed decisions lead to emotional burnout, loss of dignity, and regret. But when life delays you, it's not withholding, it's preparing, protecting, positioning. So now, let us walk together through the 5 delays you may be facing in your life and understand how each one is, in truth, a form of divine alignment. Welcome to Self-Mastery, your space for real wisdom and inner growth. Subscribe and remember the name of our YouTube channel, Self-Mastery, because others may copy the voice, but the truth lives here. Let us begin. There is a strange feeling that often arises in us when we've been waiting for something. Something that felt right, something we believed was for us, only to watch it drift farther away, delayed again and again. It could be a relationship we were ready for but couldn't hold, a life transition that felt overdue, or even a moment of recognition that never seemed to arrive. We begin to wonder, what's wrong with me? Why hasn't it happened yet? Did I miss the window? But what if those delays weren't setbacks at all? What if they were sacred pauses? There is a saying, rejection is God's protection. And while it may sound cliché on the surface, its deeper wisdom begins to unfold when we consider how many times we've pursued something that wasn't truly aligned with our path, only to look back months or years later and feel a quiet gratitude that never came to pass. You see, not all doors that close are meant to be opened. Some doors are sealed not because we're not good enough, but because entering would lead to something that takes us further from who we are becoming. Imagine a woman named Lena. She spent 3 years in a relationship with a man she thought she would marry. Their bond was intense, passionate, even addictive. But it was also inconsistent. He came close, only to pull away. He made promises, but they always hovered somewhere in the future. Still, she waited, she hoped, and every time it felt like the relationship would progress, something disrupted it. A new job in a different city, a family issue, or simply emotional unavailability masked as business. Eventually, the relationship dissolved, and at first, Lena spiraled. She believed she had failed to love deeply enough, failed to be patient enough, failed to hold on long enough. But with time and stillness, she began to notice something remarkable. She was no longer anxious. She no longer woke up wondering if she would be enough that day. She began to write again. She reconnected with friends she had distanced herself from. And slowly, she realized the delay was never about him. It was about her, about giving her space to remember herself. Often, what delays us is the very thing that protects us. It shields us from relationships that drain our emotional reservoir. It keeps us from jumping into roles or careers that would imprison our creative spirit. And most of all, it gives us the silence required to hear the subtle guidance we would otherwise ignore. In neuroscience, there is a concept called emotional incongruence. It refers to the inner tension we feel when our actions, choices, or relationships are misaligned with our emotional truth. And when this misalignment is chronic, it begins to show up not just emotionally, but physically through fatigue, stress disorders, and even illness. The body, quite literally, resists the life path we're forcing ourselves into. So when life delays you, it's not just a coincidence. It may very well be your nervous system, your subconscious, and your deeper self collaborating to protect your wholeness. Let's take another story. A man named Yusuf was offered a prestigious promotion overseas. It was a role he had worked years to attain, higher salary, recognition, and influence. But something in him hesitated. The role would separate him from his aging parents, and it would require him to work 80-hour weeks, leaving no space for the community work he loved. Everyone told him this was the opportunity of a lifetime, but he declined. At first, the decision felt foolish. Was he sabotaging his future? Had he just delayed his rise? 6 months later, the company went through a massive restructuring. The department he would have led was dissolved. The man who took the role was let go. Meanwhile, Yusuf had started a non-profit focused on youth mentorship, a long-held dream, and discovered a deeper sense of fulfillment than any title could provide. This is the mystery of divine timing. We often only understand it in hindsight, but it's in those moments where we choose alignment over urgency, wholeness over recognition, that we realize how protection often comes disguised as disappointment. So, how does this apply to relationships, especially the ones where we feel ready, willing and open, yet still alone? We must begin to understand that emotional readiness is not the same as relational readiness. You may feel emotionally available. You may feel ready to give your heart, to share your life. But relational readiness is about more than willingness. It's about wiring. Neuroscience reminds us that attachment patterns formed in early life affect how we connect, how we perceive safety, and how we navigate intimacy. A person may seem emotionally present, but if they haven't yet unraveled their attachment fears or trauma triggers, a relationship, even a good one, can become a battlefield. So a delay in meeting someone or a delay in the progress of a connection may not be a punishment. It may be a moment offered to you to resolve your own inner patterns, to rewire your responses, to deepen your sense of worth, to heal what would otherwise sabotage the relationship you're meant to have. And just as powerfully, a delay may be shielding you from someone else's unfinished lessons. Imagine entering into a deep relationship with someone who is still battling their own shadows, someone who loves you, but who cannot yet be present, honest, or vulnerable. Your love would become the canvas on which their wounds are projected. Your relationship would become the vessel for their chaos. This is not cruelty, it's timing. You are not late. You are being spared from being someone's emotional detox. That is why waiting is not wasted. It's sacred. The time you spend waiting, growing, listening, this is the time that makes you ready not just to receive love, but to sustain it. Because love is not just about arrival. It is about endurance, about presence, about consistency. And presence cannot exist where urgency rules. Now let us enter deeper into this moment of delay, not just as a protective force, but as a training ground. In relationships, one of the most important things to master is timing. Not just chronological timing, but emotional timing. Have you ever said something in a moment of anger that you later regretted? Have you ever confessed love too soon or stayed silent when your heart needed to speak? These misalignments in timing often leave lasting impressions on those we care about most. But when you've been delayed, you're being invited to develop what we call emotional timing. The ability to sense when to speak, when to be silent, when to lean in, and when to let go. This emotional sensitivity is not born from force. It's born from space, and space only arrives through delay. There is a profound story from Japanese culture about a tea master. He was asked to serve tea to a royal guest. The first time he tried, he spilled the tea. Embarrassed, he practiced again and again. Days passed. The royal guest waited. On the fourth attempt, the master arrived, not with trembling hands, but with absolute stillness. He served the tea slowly, carefully, without rush. The guest was moved, not by the tea itself, but by the grace in its delivery. Later, the master shared something simple but unforgettable to her. I didn't need more speed. I needed more stillness. How many of us rush into relationships trying to prove ourselves? How many of us try to accelerate connection, forgetting that intimacy is not earned through force, but built through trust and timing? When you allow delay to teach you emotional timing, you become less reactive. You listen not only to words but to silence. You begin to understand what someone truly needs beyond what they say. You begin to feel energy, to sense disconnection before it becomes conflict, to offer patience where others would demand answers. This is the foundation of relational intelligence. And it cannot be learned in urgency. It can only be learned in delay. There is research in behavioral psychology that reveals something fascinating. People who delay gratification, who are able to wait for a better reward later, tend to have healthier relationships, higher emotional intelligence, and greater life satisfaction. Why? Because they've learned to hold desire without losing presence. They've learned to wait without collapsing into frustration. And that is the exact quality required to build lasting love. In modern dating, we often hear phrases like, if he wanted to, he would, or she's just playing games. But the truth is more nuanced. Many people are not emotionally delayed because they don't care. They are delayed because they haven't learned the timing of intimacy. They haven't been trained to hold another person's heart with care. And sometimes, the most loving thing life can do is delay your entry into their world until both of you are truly capable of building something sacred. So if you are in a season of waiting, of delay, of emotional pause, do not rush to fill the silence. Sit with it. Let it teach you. Ask yourself, what have I been forcing? What have I been fearing? Where am I trying to accelerate something that life is gently slowing down? Because the delay you're resisting may be the very grace that's protecting your heart from being broken. It may be the preparation required for you to show up in love, not with anxiety, but with awareness. And when that moment finally arrives, when the relationship begins, or the path opens, or the answer comes, you will not carry desperation into it. You will carry wisdom, and wisdom never arrives in a rush. It is born from the discipline of delay. There is a common misunderstanding many people carry when something they deeply desire doesn't materialize in the time they expect. They assume it's rejection. They interpret it as being overlooked or not being chosen. But this misunderstanding comes from a very fragile part of our mind, the part that craves certainty, the part that seeks validation from outcomes, and the part that hasn't yet realized that refinement often arrives disguised as delay. To refine something means to improve it by making small changes. It means to remove impurities, to bring something closer to its essence. And when life delays us, be it in love, in career, or in spiritual clarity, it is often because something within us is being purified, whether we're conscious of it or not. This purification process is deeply personal. It doesn't happen through success or applause. It happens in the quiet seasons when nothing seems to be moving forward, and yet something deep inside is shifting. A young woman once told her story of heartbreak. She was engaged to a man she had been with for 5 years. They had planned the wedding, told their families, even named their future children. But 3 months before the ceremony, he called it off. No explanation, just silence. In the aftermath, she broke. She doubted everything. Her worth, her intuition, her ability to ever love again. For a year, she couldn't enter a new relationship. It wasn't just fear, it was something deeper, an invisible wall inside her. At first, she tried to tear it down. She read books, went to therapy, traveled, but nothing seemed to fix the ache. Then, one evening, during a quiet walk through a local park, she stopped. Not out of exhaustion, but out of realization. She was no longer searching for answers. She was listening. Listening not with her ears, but with her body. Her silence had become a teacher. She realized she had been carrying a belief that love must be earned through perfection, that she needed to constantly prove her value in a relationship. This belief wasn't born in the engagement. It had lived in her since childhood. Her partner had only reflected it back. In that season of delay, she didn't lose love. She lost the illusion that she had to deserve it. She didn't realize it at the time, but her delay was the cocoon where her refinement took place. Her mind began to soften. Her spirit became less anxious. She no longer chased closure. She became closure. And when she eventually entered a new relationship, it wasn't from a place of needing to be seen. It was from a place of already being whole. This is why delays are not rejections. They are moments of refinement, not to make you more likable, but to make you more you. It is easy to confuse activity with growth. Many people move quickly through relationships, jobs, and even spiritual practices, believing that movement equals momentum. But speed does not always indicate alignment. Sometimes the most rapid growth happens in stillness, in waiting, in silence. Eastern philosophy teaches that a teacup must be emptied before it can be refilled. And this applies not only to knowledge, but to identity. There are identities we carry, roles we've been playing, that must dissolve before we can step into the next chapter of life. And these old roles don't always leave easily. They cling to us. That's why refinement takes time. You're not just learning new things. You're unlearning who you thought you had to be. In the context of relationships, this is crucial. Many people believe they are ready for partnership because they know how to give. But giving is not the same as connecting. True connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is impossible when you're still wearing a mask. Even if it's a mask of strength, there's an old saying, you attract not what you want, but what you are. So, if you're attracting emotionally unavailable people, it's not always because they're hiding. It may be because you are still hiding behind independence, behind competence, behind business. And the delay you're experiencing in love is not because love is avoiding you. It's because love is waiting for the real you to show up. This process of becoming real is the essence of refinement, and it cannot be rushed. Refinement shows up in strange ways, sometimes through heartbreak, sometimes through being passed over, sometimes through a season of invisibility, where no one notices your effort or your worth. But underneath that invisibility, something powerful is happening. You're becoming less reactive, less driven by praise, less addicted to approval, and more anchored in truth. In psychology, there's a concept known as distress tolerance. It's the ability to stay present and functional in situations that are emotionally challenging. People with high distress tolerance can experience disappointment, rejection, or delay without spiraling. This is a mark of maturity. Not because they feel less, but because they have stay more. Delay then becomes the training ground for emotional resilience. Think of it like the sculptor who chisels stone to reveal what already exists within. The stone doesn't resist. It surrenders to the process. And in that surrender, beauty is shaped. But for us, the chisel is delay, and the refinement is not on the outside. It is within, the quiet, powerful reshaping of how we see ourselves and the world. This brings us to another profound gift embedded within delay, the exposure of hidden attachments. So often, we believe that we are simply waiting for what's meant for us. But beneath that surface desire is something else, an unconscious attachment, an emotional grip, a fear of being without, a subtle belief that we are incomplete until something outside of us arrives. Attachments are different from love. Love is generous. It gives and lets go. Attachment clings. It needs. And it confuses possession with presence. Take, for example, a woman named Sophia. She had just turned 40 and was deeply longing for a child. She had always dreamed of becoming a mother. Every year that passed without this dream being fulfilled felt like a personal failure. Her relationships suffered because she would enter each one already carrying the weight of that dream. The men she met didn't just meet her. They met her timeline, her expectations, her silent fears. Eventually, she noticed a pattern. Each time a relationship became serious, it collapsed under pressure. Not because the connection wasn't real, but because her attachment distorted its pace. After her third breakup in 5 years, Sophia began to unravel her attachment. She sat with the pain, not just of childlessness, but of the belief that she was unworthy without that identity. And slowly, she began to reclaim herself. She started volunteering with children. She became a mentor. And most importantly, she stopped holding every relationship hostage to a future outcome. The attachment dissolved. Love became love again. Not a transaction, not a strategy, just presence. Connection. This is what delay does. It brings your attachments into the light, and once seen, they can be transformed. In the spiritual traditions of the East, there is an idea that attachment leads to suffering, not because desire is wrong, but because desire becomes obsession when it is rooted in fear. When we feel empty, we attach to people, to achievements, to timelines, believing they will make us whole. But nothing outside can fill what we have abandoned inside. When life delays you, it is not ignoring your desire, it is inviting you to purify it, to release the fear beneath it, to reconnect with your wholeness. This is not easy work. It takes patience, honesty, and stillness. But what emerges is priceless clarity. Once you see your attachment for what it is, you are no longer controlled by it. You become free. You stop chasing people who do not see you. You stop forcing timelines that are not yours. You begin to trust deeply that life is not against you, and neither is time. There's a quote by the poet Rainer Maria Rilke that says, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves." To love the questions, to sit in uncertainty without collapse. This is maturity, this is freedom. And in the realm of relationships, it is absolutely essential. When two people come together, they do not just meet as bodies or personalities. They meet as frequencies. If one is vibrating with fear, urgency, or attachment, that energy will ripple through the relationship. Even if it's unspoken, it will be felt. But if both individuals come from clarity, stillness, and self-respect, the relationship becomes a sanctuary, not a storm. This is the true preparation that happens in delay. You're not just waiting for someone to choose you. You're becoming the version of yourself that can love without losing yourself, that can stay without clinging, that can speak without fear of abandonment, that can walk away without resentment. And so, the next time you feel frustration rising because something you deeply want hasn't yet arrived, ask yourself, what is this delay trying to reveal in me? Where am I still attached to an outcome rather than connected to the present? What identity am I being invited to shed? These questions will guide you back, not to the external solution, but to the internal refinement that precedes all true transformation. Because the longer you walk this path, the more you realize that delay is not a punishment, it's an invitation. an invitation to pause, to purify, to become. Energy is a language far older than words. It speaks before we open our mouths. It speaks through our posture, through the stillness or turbulence of our presence. We are constantly sending signals to others, and they are constantly receiving us, whether consciously or not. This is why in moments when nothing is said, so much can still be felt. And this is why some relationships don't end with a conversation. They dissolve because of what is sensed, but never spoken. There are times when everything in your life appears still. You've been doing the work. You've practiced patience. You've tried to stay open and present, yet nothing moves forward. No doors open. No new relationship begins. No answer arrives. It's easy to feel frustration in these moments, but what often goes unnoticed is the hidden wisdom beneath this stillness. It is offering you time to realign your inner energy. Realignment does not mean fixing what is broken. It means returning to a natural rhythm that's been lost through stress, fear, or emotional overload. In modern life, especially in our relationships, we are taught to be outwardly productive while ignoring what is happening inwardly. The result is disconnection, not just from others, but from our own emotional pulse. There was a man who had come out of a long-term relationship. He tried dating again just 2 months later. On the surface, he seemed ready, emotionally articulate, mature, calm. But every woman he met gave the same feedback in subtle, indirect ways. They couldn't feel him, not fully. Something about him felt closed, even though he was speaking the right words. What he didn't realize was that although his mind had moved on, his energy had not. He was still vibrating at the frequency of unresolved grief, fear of vulnerability, and hidden guilt. His energy was misaligned with his words, and people may not be able to explain it, but they always feel it. Energy misalignment shows up when we try to begin something new while carrying the emotional residue of something old. It shows up when we force ourselves to be ready before we have allowed ourselves to heal. And this misalignment creates emotional static. We begin attracting connections that are confused, inconsistent, or short-lived, not because others are flawed, but because our signal is unclear. In both ancient Eastern medicine and modern neuroscience, the body is seen as an integrated system. The mind, emotions, and energy are not separate. When there is emotional turmoil that isn't processed, the nervous system remains in a state of defense, fight, flight, or freeze. This alters our communication. Our tone, our eye contact, our emotional availability become filtered through a survival lens. This is what makes emotional alignment not just a personal virtue, but a relational necessity. Relationships are mirrors. They reflect our state of being. If we're anxious and uncertain, we attract people who trigger that anxiety. If we're grounded and secure, we begin to magnetize people who feel safe. But the relationship we have with ourselves sets the frequency for everything else. Imagine a woman named Zoya. She had spent most of her adult life seeking emotionally intense relationships. They began quickly, passionately, even recklessly, but they always ended with betrayal or withdrawal. For years, she told herself the story that she was too much or too unlucky. But something shifted after one particular heartbreak. Instead of trying to escape the pain, she sat with it. She turned inward. She began to observe her patterns. She realized her energy had always been restless, constantly reaching, constantly proving, constantly craving intensity, because she feared stillness. Stillness felt like emptiness. So she began the quiet work of returning to herself. She stopped dating. She reconnected with nature. She practiced breathwork. She began speaking to herself gently, like she would to a child. And slowly, something extraordinary happened. Her energy changed. She no longer felt desperate for love. She began to feel lovable without needing to chase it. People noticed the difference. Her presence became softer, yet more powerful, her eyes clearer, her boundaries firmer, but with compassion. And eventually, she entered a relationship that felt completely unfamiliar. It was peaceful, steady, safe. For the first time, her energy no longer attracted chaos. It invited calm. This is the power of energetic realignment. It transforms not only how others perceive you, but how you perceive yourself. And it's this perception, this internal narrative, that shapes every interaction. There's a subtle but powerful concept in relational psychology known as emotional contagion. It refers to how people tend to absorb and reflect the emotional states of those around them. When your inner energy is rooted in anxiety, others begin to feel anxious around you, even if you're smiling. When your inner energy is calm, people begin to soften in your presence, even without words. This is not mystical, it's biology. The nervous system is always scanning for cues. Is this person safe? Is this person present? Can I relax with them? So when life delays you, when nothing in your external world is changing, it might be because your internal world is being recalibrated to a healthier energetic state. You are being offered a quiet space to come back to coherence, to harmonize your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors so that when the next opportunity arrives, you're not just ready intellectually, but vibrationally. This work cannot be outsourced. No amount of coaching, reading, or planning can substitute for the experience of sitting in silence with yourself and feeling what is really there. The pain, the fear, the unmet needs, the subtle tension in the body. This is why delay is sacred. It creates the space for you to hear what is usually drowned out by noise and busyness. In this realignment process, certain things begin to fall away. Friendships that were built on gossip or co-dependence no longer feel fulfilling. Patterns of over-giving in relationships start to feel exhausting. Even your inner self-talk begins to change. You start to say things like, "I deserve peace," or "I no longer beg to be chosen." These are not affirmations. They are recognitions, truths emerging from your center. And with this energetic clarity, your boundaries become effortless. You stop explaining why you won't tolerate emotional inconsistency. You simply don't. Your energy speaks for you. And in relationships, this is often what determines whether someone respects you or tries to test your limits. When your energy is grounded, others feel it. They may not always like it, especially if they're used to control or manipulation, but they respect it. And this respect becomes the foundation of relational safety. A powerful example of this can be seen in a man named Idris. He had spent years playing the role of emotional caretaker in every relationship. He was the one who fixed things, who stayed calm during storms, who held space for everyone's pain but rarely acknowledged his own. Over time, this made him resentful. He felt unseen, yet he kept giving. After another breakup where his emotional labor went unreciprocated, he decided to change, not by becoming hard, but by becoming honest. He began to examine his energy. He saw how his people-pleasing wasn't kindness. It was fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of being alone. So he worked on restoring his own sense of emotional sufficiency. He began saying no. He let go of the need to explain his boundaries. And when he entered his next relationship, something had shifted. He was no longer emotionally porous. He didn't absorb other people's chaos. He held space, yes, but from a rooted place. He didn't collapse under guilt. He didn't chase. He simply showed up with clarity and presence. And for the first time, his partner met him there. This is what happens when your inner energy realigns. You become magnetic, not because you perform or please, but because you carry a frequency of wholeness. And wholeness is rare. In a world built on rush and distraction, the person who radiates calm, centered energy becomes unforgettable. It's important to understand that this is not about becoming emotionally numb or detached. Realignment is not withdrawal. It's recalibration. It's about creating coherence between your inner world and outer expression. So your yes truly means yes. Your no is clear. Your presence is full. This coherence breeds trust, not just from others, but within yourself. When you trust your own energy, you stop second-guessing your decisions. You stop overriding your intuition. You no longer stay in rooms where your soul is shrinking. You move with discernment, not desperation. And this discernment doesn't make you cold. It makes you precise. It helps you see through charm into character. It helps you sense when someone's energy feels heavy, chaotic, or manipulative, even if their words sound perfect. And it helps you walk away from that which is not aligned without guilt or shame. In the space of delay, when everything external seems paused, you are being taught how to carry yourself differently, not just physically, but energetically. And the shift is subtle. You may notice you breathe more deeply in conversations. You may notice your voice drops into a calmer register. You may pause before replying, not to hesitate, but to feel. You may walk into a room and no longer feel the need to prove anything. You simply arrive, present, attuned, whole. This level of presence cannot be manufactured. It is cultivated through stillness, through practice, through choosing silence over noise, observation over reaction, integration over performance. And when this becomes your new baseline, something beautiful happens. The right people begin to find you, not because you chased them, but because your energy called them in. Your frequency became a beacon, not of perfection, but of peace. Peace, after all, is the most attractive energy in the world. Not the peace of pretending, but the peace of inner congruence. And it is this peace that often requires delay. Because if you had received what you wanted before you were energetically ready, you may have misused it, feared it, or sabotaged it. But when you arrive in alignment, what comes to you doesn't overwhelm you, it meets you. And you meet it with grace, strength, and clarity. Sometimes the greatest delay in life is the delay in being seen. Not by the world, but by those you thought were meant to see you. Your worth, your light, your quiet strength. It can feel deeply discouraging when you're ready to offer your heart, your loyalty, your truth. But the people in your life only see the surface of you, or worse, only see their own projections. This isn't failure. This too is a protection. And the wisdom behind it is not in fighting to be seen, but in observing what it reveals. One of the most powerful forms of protection is this: when God keeps you hidden from people who are not prepared for the weight of your soul. It is often in this invisible space, where you feel unnoticed or unappreciated, that the deepest cultivation happens. In the garden, seeds are buried not because they are discarded, but because they are being positioned for something greater. There is no growth without the sacred work that happens in the dark. Being overlooked, misunderstood, or delayed in receiving recognition is never a punishment. It's preparation. And more importantly, it's insulation from those who may mishandle you if you were visible too soon. Let's take a moment to reflect on how this delay functions in relationships. Sometimes you are not given the relationship you long for, not because love has forgotten you, but because the people who have yet to recognize your value would not know how to nurture it. That is not rejection. That is divine timing. Imagine a woman who spent years giving her heart to a man who only saw her through the lens of convenience. She made sacrifices, showed up in loyalty, gave emotionally, spiritually, even physically, believing that her effort would open his eyes. But it didn't. Each day became a slow unraveling of her self-worth. And after years of pouring, she was left empty, not because she wasn't worthy, but because she was giving her full light to someone who had only brought a shadow to the table. This is not an isolated story. Many people walk into relationships with their soul unguarded, hoping that love will teach the other person how to see clearly. But if someone cannot see themselves with honesty, they will not see you with reverence. And if they cannot see your essence, they will treat you like something replaceable. So when life withholds a connection, delays a union, or closes a door with someone you thought was the one, pause. That is not failure, that's clarity disguised as delay. You are being hidden from harm, even if your heart didn't understand it at the time. Emotional neuroscience tells us that when the brain forms an attachment, particularly in romantic or deeply personal relationships, it creates an illusion of safety, even if the relationship is unhealthy. This is called attachment bias. We tend to stay where we feel familiar, even if that familiarity is harming us. So when someone leaves you, or when a relationship doesn't evolve the way you hoped, it often feels like a betrayal, but in many cases, it's a biological reset. You are being given an opportunity to rewire your sense of self-worth and break cycles that your nervous system has normalized. Delays in recognition are not just about love. They affect career, purpose, even your self-image. Have you ever wondered why, despite your talent or sincerity, you remain unseen in your field? Or why others are elevated while you remain in silence? What if the silence is sacred? What if you're being prepared, not punished? There's a Japanese term mo, which means the space between things. It's the silence in a piece of music, the pause before a reply, the stillness before dawn. In life, ma shows up in the delay. It is a protective rhythm, guiding you not to rush into spaces where your spirit would not thrive. Many are forced into visibility before their soul is ready. We see it often with social media fame, even premature leadership. They receive the stage before they've developed the internal structure to carry the responsibility. And so they collapse, because visibility without grounding is not a blessing, it's a burden. So when life hides you, be grateful. The delay is not life forgetting you, it is life preserving you. It's giving you time to build your emotional stamina, refine your discernment, and prepare your energy so that when you do arrive, you can stay. Staying is harder than arriving. Longevity requires maturity. Let's bring this back to relationships. One of the most common forms of suffering is when you're ready to love deeply, but the people you meet only offer shallow connection. You may begin to question yourself. What am I doing wrong? Am I too intense, too emotional, too spiritual? And yet, those very qualities are not flaws. They are simply not digestible to someone who's still feasting on superficiality. Not everyone is hungry for depth. Some people only crave distraction, and your presence threatens their illusions. If you find yourself consistently being overlooked in relationships, not because you are absent, but because your presence is too pure for someone to comprehend, remember this light often blinds those who are used to darkness. Let's consider a short story of a man named Arman. In his late 40s, Arman had never married. Not for lack of opportunity. He had dated many women, but none seemed to align with his deeper longing. He was kind, generous, spiritually attuned, but in a culture that often celebrated flash over depth, his gentleness was misunderstood. His friends told him he was too soft, that he needed to play the game. But Arman didn't. He chose stillness. He chose self-reflection. He waited. Then one day, while volunteering at a hospital, he met someone. Sophia, a quiet, resilient nurse who had also spent years misunderstood. There was no drama, no performance, just presence. A quiet knowing. Arman wasn't late. He wasn't behind. He was simply being protected from relationships that couldn't carry his soul. His delay was his alignment. Spiritual protection is often invisible until you look back. That delay that once frustrated you, that closed door that shattered your expectations. One day, you'll see the grace behind it. One day, you'll whisper, "Thank you," not for what happened, but for what didn't. This is especially true in emotional growth. Many times, people ask, why can't I move forward emotionally? Why do I keep attracting emotionally unavailable partners? The answer is often subtle because the delay is protecting you from settling. Until you develop a deep emotional vocabulary within yourself, you will remain vulnerable to people who do not speak the language of emotional responsibility. That delay gives you time to mature, so that when you do meet someone, you don't confuse attachment with love. The difference between a life that blooms and one that withers often comes down to one thing: timing. Not the world's timing, not your timing, but divine timing. There is a time when fruit is sweet and a time when it is bitter. If you rush the process, you miss the flavor. In life, the bitterness of delay often turns into the sweetness of destiny if you stay grounded long enough. This is why inner stillness is so important. The ability to remain calm in the unknown, to not grasp for clarity, but to allow clarity to arrive, is emotional mastery. And that mastery is often born during the times you feel unseen. In the space of being unseen, ask yourself, what is this moment teaching me about my identity? Not the identity I show to the world, but the one I carry in silence. What do I believe about my worth when no one is affirming it? Can I still stand tall without applause? Can I still love without being loved back immediately? Because if you can answer yes to those questions, then you are not delayed. You are being deepened. This is not just theory. It is reflected in the science of emotional resilience. The brain develops stronger neural pathways for patience, emotional regulation, and self-awareness when exposed to controlled discomfort. What you experience in these seasons of delay is a biological strengthening of your inner core. It is wisdom being encoded into your nervous system. Every moment you wait without collapsing builds invisible scaffolding. One day, when life brings you that great relationship, that opportunity, that recognition, you'll be ready to carry it without losing yourself. Remember, a soul that has been tempered in delay cannot be shaken by momentary attention. You do not crave external validation because your inner roots have grown deep. So, don't curse the delay. Don't question your worth based on someone's blindness. And don't rush the unfolding. There are eyes being prepared to see you fully, hearts being softened to hold you gently, and seasons being aligned to meet you perfectly. Until then, be content in the unseen, not because you are invisible, but because you are sacred, and the sacred is never revealed to the unready. When we look back at the moments in life where things didn't unfold the way we hoped, what we often find, only in hindsight, is that we were being redirected, not rejected. The delays that tested our patience, the unanswered prayers that stirred our doubts, the closed doors that left us in confusion, these weren't signs of failure. They were the silent work of protection, the unseen hand of timing preparing us for what we could not yet hold. You were never forgotten in the delay. You were being fortified. The right relationship wasn't withheld because you were unworthy. It was delayed so you wouldn't settle for what was beneath your value. That opportunity didn't vanish because you lacked talent. It was paused so you could grow into a vessel strong enough to carry its weight with grace. Every detour has been forming you in silence. Every still season has been shaping the roots beneath your soil. And in a world that teaches speed, it takes discipline to trust divine timing. It takes courage to be still when others are running. But the deepest form of trust is not when you praise the good outcomes. It's when you wait with dignity in the unknown. That's where your soul matures. That's where your emotional gravity deepens. That's where wisdom begins to speak louder than fear. So if you're waiting, let it be an active waiting. One filled with quiet preparation, emotional clarity, and daily self-honoring choices. Don't just count the time, make the time count. Because protection doesn't always look like peace. It often looks like pruning. And pruning is painful only when you don't understand that it's preparing you to bear something greater. The delay is not a punishment, it's precision. The absence is not a denial, it's alignment. And the time it takes is the time it needs. You don't need everything to happen quickly. You just need everything to happen in truth. When the moment arrives, and it will, you will not be the same person who first made the request. You will be wiser, you will be stronger, you will be ready. And in that moment, it won't just be about what finally arrived. It will be about who you became while you waited. That's the true victory. That's the real gift. The delay was never a failure. It was always sacred protection. If this message touched you, subscribe to Self-Mastery and join a community grounded in growth and wisdom. Leave a comment below. Your story might inspire someone else on their journey.